If I had a crystal ball and I could look into this crystal ball and tell you guys exactly where your business opportunities lie looking forward, what is working in the future, what is not working in the future, things that we should totally eliminate, things that we should totally start doing in order to see your business grow and flourish. Imagine how amazing that would be. Guys, I don't have a crystal ball, but I do have the next best thing. We've recently just launched our opportunity analysis, and the entire premise of this exercise is to help you guys understand where the holes in your bucket currently lie. Why is that important? Because we don't want to start filling a bucket that's leaking. Guys, for a limited time only, I'm going to be offering this as a free giveaway. It's $350, but for you site shedders, you're going to get it for free. You need to head across to tradie.wiki/grow and enter the code SiteShed to get it for nothing. Off the back of it, book a time to have a chat and we'll see where it takes us. We're looking forward to helping you and seeing where your opportunities lie. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Taylor, welcome to the Site Shed podcast.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Matt. I really appreciate it.
Long time listener, first time appearance.
There you go. Yeah, I obviously I've joined the Site Shed as we've just found out back in 2017, so it was a while ago. And yeah, I suppose listening to the Site Shed for a while now and sort of helped me sort of get to certain places that I wanted to go. So it's a bit of a spin out really to be sitting here now on the other side, mate. So
who would have thought, hey? You've become the when the student becomes the educator.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, it's a bit mind blowing, mate.
So you run Odyssey Landscapes. You're up on the Sunshine Coast of Queensland. For any of you folks that are not familiar with that overseas, that's on the eastern seaboard of Australia, up in Queensland. And you've grown quite a fast business, I would say. You've gone from 1 to 15, employees within the space of 5 years, which is no easy feat. So we're here today to talk a little bit about some of those, a bit about that journey and some of the wins, and I suppose more importantly, some of the lessons that you've learned along the way. So people out there can relate and hopefully navigate some of those turbulent waters that you no doubt would have been through. So mate, thanks for your time today.
Definitely, no, it's my pleasure, mate. Yeah, like I said, it's definitely up and down journey, definitely good parts and bad parts. So, but it's all part of it at the end of the day. If you want to sort of get to where you want to go, like it's just something you can't change really. At the end of the day, it all sort of makes you stronger.
Sure. Yeah. It's business is like personal development. You can't just do it once and say you finished it. You're always growing. You're always changing. And I think that's probably a testament to it, like just being agile and being in a position where you can make changes and you can be responsive. I find that's where bigger businesses fall over. It's because they lose the ability to be agile and they lose the ability to pivot and make changes accordingly. And I mean, perhaps sometimes in small business we do it too much and it gets caught up in distraction, but maybe we'll touch a little bit on some of those things as well throughout this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. And exactly right, you're dead right. Well, that's what a lot of those other bigger businesses always struggle to, is just always pivoting and moving when they need to, and there's an obstacle. It's a lot harder for them. It takes them longer to implement things. Like I've always sort of likened it almost like a cruise ship. The bigger the boat, the longer it takes to adjust that course and turn that circle. Whereas if you're a small little tinny or just a well-oiled machine, sometimes you can make that turn a hell of a lot quicker than the big boys. So
I should probably give a heads up too for all you viewers and listeners out there. Off the back of this conversation, we're going to be having another one with Taylor, which is going to speak to some of the content strategy that you guys have implemented of late. So make sure you guys tune into that, because Taylor's going to talk about how he's started to record content for his YouTube channel and how he's how he's going about that structurally. So we're going to drop some practical how-tos in that episode. But in this episode today, we really just want to talk a little bit more about that journey and how you got from, where you were to where you are now. And so can you maybe give us a bit of a heads up as to, what our Odyssey Landscapes does and, what the niche is and who you target and, so on and so forth?
Yeah, for sure. I started Odyssey Landscapes 5 years ago now. And our primary focus was to be the premier luxury landscaping company on the Sunshine Coast by the end of 2021. And we're getting close to the end of that goal now. Nice. So we nearly reached it. I suppose it's a bit of a, to be honest, it's a bit of, unmeasurable objective. But as far as I look at it, I say we're getting close. But essentially what we do, luxury landscaping all over the Sunshine Coast. We do everything around backyards you can think of pretty much with one company. So we do, concreting, tiling, fencing, pool fencing, all your sort of softscape stuff like your planting and gardens and whatnot, retaining walls, earthworks, pretty much the whole kit caboodle. Anything you can think of outside, we pretty much do. That's how we've got it set up as well. And I have set up another business that's external to Odyssey Landscapes, called Poseidon Pools as well. So we do pool builds as well.
Right. And talk to me a little bit about when you said we do premier. What does premier mean?
Oh, for me, I just always look at it and I go, well, if you're looking at getting any landscape work done, or you're looking at, you're outside and you're going, geez, I really want to fix this place up and I want to make it look amazing. And you went out and you looked at, all these landscapers, the top, you just started Googling and Facebooking and so on and so forth. And you started looking for someone and you looked at people's work, reputation, sort of what feedback generally has. You'd be going, geez, these guys look pretty good and that's who I want to use. So that's for me, that's the concept of premier for me, that there's almost sort of no contest as to sort of who I would pick to do the work. So that's sort of my description of premier, I suppose.
And so with that in mind, was that something that was that part of the initial business brief? Like when you got started, were you like, well, this is what I want to position myself as, or did that evolve?
No, that was always what I sort of wanted to be. So what I always wanted to position the business to be, I always wanted to be the best, top quality. Like there was, again, no contest as to who I would pick or use. I think how we've gotten there over time wasn't how I always thought it was going to be. I thought for myself personally, getting there was going to be through like showing quality of work and all that kind of stuff, and it still is. But there's just a hell of a lot more to it than that, to be honest. So,
like what?
Oh, mate, you can do the best work in the world if you want. It doesn't matter if you were there building the Taj Mahal in someone's backyard. If no one can see it, it doesn't matter. No one knows about it.
One of the things that I bang on about this all the time on the podcast, and, running Tradie Web Guys, the digital agency, one of the big things that we see guys doing really badly, but be in a position that they could be doing it really well is telling their story better. And so we've got a huge shift over the last couple of years within that space, and it's really trying to help people showcase and exhibit the caliber of work they are, because it leverages assets that they control. Like you can leverage the website, which you're in control of. You can leverage things like your database, which you're in control of, and you can use story to really, to compound those results from using those things. And guys, and we're going to talk about this in our other episode where we're talking about content strategy and, how you guys have done and implemented that. Because as we know, when we polled the group, there was a lot of people have a lot of questions and a lot of things they want to learn about, a lot of fears they want to overcome in that space. But I think at the crux of it, like it sounds to me like you guys have invested in that mindset and in that part of business from a marketing perspective, and it's been paying dividends for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's crucial at the end of the day. Look, I think at any point, if you have a smaller business, and like, us in the beginning, well, not beginning, but when we're running sort of 3 to 4 guys or whatnot. And I was at a point where I was sort of on the tools, but off the tools. And I wanted to sort of grow the business more. The only way I could have done that was through marketing my business properly and just creating content to scale it and grow it, which is so crucial, at the end of the day. And I think some people have maybe a negative view towards marketing, whether it's that they're not approaching it correctly, or they get scared of maybe the amount of dollars that they got to put into it to get it back. So, which is just completely understandable. Like even a couple of my staff, have the same sort of mindset too. My older tradies that work for me, we do a fair whack of advertising on all sorts of different platforms. And I remember one of my guys came and said to me, he said, "Oh, it'll be at the point one day where you won't need to do any advertising or do any of this and do any of that. And I just sort of looked at him and I was sort of thinking, I was like, and I'd said to him, I said, look, mate, does Coca-Cola still advertise? Does McDonald's still advertise? They need to advertise? And then he was like, oh, yeah. And I said, mate, it's not the point. It's the fact that it's a ever revolving circle and you've got to keep brand awareness out there and that kind of stuff. If those guys are still advertising, then, there's got to be some merit behind it.
The thing is, and we've spoken about this before in previous episodes on the show, like you'll grow a business up to, maybe depending on the business and depending on the vertical, I suppose, but typically speaking, it's very hard to grow a business beyond, $500,000 or $1 million for bigger ticket industries like building or whatever without investing in some sort of marketing, because essentially your database will only get you so far. And so, if you want to really scale, there comes a point where you do need to market yourself, which includes, like you say, brand awareness. Like a lot of people have this perception of marketing is just about throwing money into Google Ads, which is not the case. Like I think what you guys are doing with brand awareness proves that, it's really a matter of positioning yourself as an expert and creating useful and relevant content. And then being able to, once you've got that content, you can do so much with it. You can drive traffic to it. You can send it out in newsletters. You can stick it on your website, whatever you want to do, build a YouTube channel. But, without that strategy and without that, I suppose, that foresight, it makes it very difficult.
Definitely. And like you said, and that's why I've always sort of seen it as critical. I suppose for me, like talking of my journey, whatnot, and a few sort of things, like obviously when I started out, I was fine, obviously just sort of getting work from word of mouth, referrals and that kind of stuff. And we still get a fair few referrals now, which is good. But at the end of the day, I think, for me, when I got to that 4 people stage, that's when I was like, I need to change something, I need to do something different, hence why I think around that time as well, I invested in business coaching, a bit of that stuff, and sort of expanding my own personal knowledge and educating myself as to sort of how to run a business, like a proper business. I'm not talking about a business where, the business is me. I'm talking about a business that is external to me.
Sure.
So, and like I say, that's not, no one teaches you how to do that. So you need to invest in yourself to get there to do it.
So let's explore that a little bit, because obviously that's one thing. And to be fair, we're kind of preaching to the choir with anyone that's watching or listening to this, because they're typically in the space of wanting to improve themselves and improve their businesses. However, that conversation around getting coaching and seeking coaching and finding the right person and finding the right business that can help you, or mentors or whatever it might be, I think that's something that would be, a lot of people out there that are watching or listening to this are in a position where they're probably open to that. So how did that journey start for you, and what were some of the triggers, I suppose, that made you move into that, that arena of getting a coach or getting a mentor?
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me, I think it was actually around, I think it might have been around that sort of 2017, 2018. I actually remember I was listening to a lot of Matt Jones' podcasts, actually, and they were great, mate. They were awesome. And I was just absorbing. I was looking for anything, because, I was at a point where I was working pretty much 6 days a week, if not 7 days a week, 6 days on the tools, and Sundays in the office, trying to sort of catch up on quotes, invoices, sort of all sorts of different things. And I remember I was listening to a Matt Jones podcast. I think it was the fella from Sydney. He was a cabinet maker.
Darren.
Podcast. Yeah, it was great. And I remember him talking about and you discussing how he does, coaching religiously and that kind of stuff. He's sort of always been a big believer in it. And that's at that point where I said, hey, look, I'm working 6-7 days a week. Something's got to give, you know what I mean? There's a point where you can do it for the first, year, 2 years, and you're okay, and you've got to do what you got to do to get the business off the ground. But after that, there's a point where you just look at yourself and you go, man, I'm tired. I can't keep this up. It is unsustainable. And so that's when I said to myself, well, I've got to change. Something's got to change. Mm-hmm. And I started looking at coaching, having a look at it. I ended up finding and picking a coach, went along with it. And to be honest, it was a great experience. I just learned a lot about sort of business itself, some of the things that I needed to actually do to get it to where I wanted to be. And I think all of us as tradies, because I'm a tradie myself, we all look at our business and think, oh, no one's going to understand landscaping. Oh, no one's going to understand plumbing, or no one knows my business.
Yeah.
At the end of the day. And I think everyone thinks they're special in a way. And I'm sorry to say this, but you're not. And it's one of those things where you go, a lot of business principles are universal and transfer across a lot of businesses. They just need to be tweaked a little bit for your business. So I think someone coming in, having a look at what you're doing, and it can be scary. I think a lot of people look at it and go, well, geez, I want to look like I'm doing good, or I'm scared to show someone that I'm actually doing horrible, or that I need to change something. And, I feel for you. I was in the same position for sure. And I think just opening up and actually taking a step back and saying, hey, look, everything's not okay. I need help to change it. You know what I mean? And letting someone give you a hand and show you a way to sort of do things.
Well, it's a good thing. Like in my experience as well, the great thing about having a coach or having a mentor and even being part of a community, or, like having accountability partners or whatever you want to call it, reading books, listening to podcasts, is it opens your eyes to other ways of doing things. And it's not necessarily to say that you should or need to adopt those ways, but it certainly like brings to your awareness, principles or ways of operating that you may not have been aware of previously, which can make a significant impact, And I mean, I've said it a dozen times on the show before, when I started my plumbing apprenticeship, I was working in the maintenance space, and I was working for a company, and, and everything, I saw everything was working brilliantly. We'd go to the job, you complete the job, you get your carbon copy notepad out. A lot of Gen X's and we're sitting there going, what's a carbon copy notepad? But like you write out your invoice, you tear a copy off, you give it to the client, you go back, you give the other copy to the lady in the office, and she spends 3 months chasing the bill to get paid, and then then eventually it goes to court. And I just thought that's how business works, But it wasn't until I left that company, worked for another one, they're like, oh no, we just do everything through our phone. But I was like, what? So, I mean, everything seemed like it was working fine. And then I went and saw and, got exposure to a different way of doing things, and it was formidably better. And, it just had a huge impact across the board in terms of, staff resources, fund allocation, chasing bills, getting paid on time, like all those things were alleviated essentially through an app, So, but the point being, I suppose, if you're not out there asking questions, speaking to people, and getting outsiders looking inside, then you never really know. So, what sort of things did the business coach highlight? I mean, I suppose, respective of the fact that you were quite young in business, there was probably there was a lot of low hanging fruit, I suppose. So it would have been an easy win for the coach to start ironing out things. But what were some of the more significant areas that you felt like you were evolving in back then?
Yeah, for sure. No, because like when I started coaching, I was pretty young. Like I'm 27 now.
You're an old fella now, hey?
Yeah. And when I first started coaching, I would have been, in my early 20s, 23, 24 or something like that. And I said it was great. Like I suppose for me, the biggest refinements were looking at sort of what I actually wanted to achieve in the business, setting financial goals for actually what I wanted to achieve and what I wanted to do, but actually having a way of getting there. And then the biggest thing was just sort of letting the reins go as well is a big thing. I think for me, just educating myself in the sense of that, reading all those key books like The Pumpkin Plan, the E-Myth, Think and Grow Rich, and the list sort of keeps going on and on and on. And a lot of people would have heard of these books, but just sort of thinking about what it is I needed to do and take a step back, because I think a lot of us as well as tradies, again, we think that no one can do our job, or we go, oh, that takes too slow, I'll just do it. And you keep doing that, and you never end up getting the chance to actually take the business where you want to go. Like then they speak about, in one of those books, the E-Myth, they talk about how, if you're there's 3 levels in a business. You got a technician, a manager, and an entrepreneur, even though I sort of don't really like identifying as an entrepreneur, to be honest. Like if you're always out there doing the technician work, the grunt work, or if you're even there doing all the managing work all the time, you're going to struggle to think about those next steps that you need to actually grow the business. It's a huge thing I think most tradies struggle with, is that they always think, oh, no one can do the job like me. And you'd be surprised, as a lot of trades, like they're bad tradies for sure.
Sure.
But there's more good tradies, to be honest, than bad tradies, to be honest. And I think it's a bit of a misconception. And I think people want to sort of hold on to that title because that's what they're known for. But there's other bigger stuff waiting for them, I think, to be honest. So, and for me, I think coaching was a big thing that helped me realize that, looking at, working with so many other trade businesses that are getting coached as well, and just sort of making the effort to go out and network and talk to more people and realizing, well, hey, like there's more to it.
You touched on something there, and I think it's important because, like, I know what you mean when you say, I don't want to identify as an entrepreneur. And I think largely it's because we just immediately associate that word with like the cliche term that's become being an entrepreneur today, which sort of navigates towards that whole tech space, or some tosser driving around in a Ferrari thinking that he's the bee's knees and all this kind of stuff. It's got a bit of a stereotype, whether it's subconscious or not. But I mean, the definition of an entrepreneur, and I'm reading this right now, is a person who sets up a business or businesses taking on financial risk in the hope of profit. Now, I think that pretty much sums up anyone that's listening or watching this podcast. Anyone that owns a business is essentially an entrepreneur. So, like, and the point being, like sometimes I think we get, like that whole mindset conversation around being a business owner, which you touched on probably in the very first paragraph of this, our very first part of this conversation was, that there is certain things that you need to be able to accept when you're running a business, and some of them you may not necessarily associate with or like, but the reality is you can't just, they don't disappear. They're there, they're present. And like maybe being an entrepreneur is not something you want to be called, but at the end of the day, I think like the foundation and the focus of what an entrepreneur is out there to achieve is relevant to, across the board. It doesn't necessarily tie to that tech space. A lot of you guys out there are entrepreneurs, whether you like it or not. That also stems onto other things like, when we start delving into business and we start seeking coaching, and you were saying before, the coaches start bringing things to the forefront of what's happening, and they start looking into the business and they start finding things that may look a little bit ugly and things that we don't necessarily want to focus on, but they don't go away. You can't just bury your head in the sand and hide from them, because at some point or another you're going to have to face those things, which then brings up that conversation around leadership and tackling the truth head on. So there's like this ever growing ecosystem which is constantly evolving within business. And I think as the responsibility of a business owner, and something that I think you have definitely learned, you've got to take these things, you've got to be accountable for them, and you've got to own them, and you've got to find help in areas that you are lacking in order to help you get the results that you want to achieve. And those results that you're looking for and those areas of speciality will change as your business grows and as your role in the business grows. And so like a prime example for me is finance. Like I used to hate finance, and I used to just bury my head in the sand when it came to looking at my zero and, understanding the numbers. And now I love it. Now it's like one of the, the things I really look forward to every week. And if you had told me that 10 years ago when I started a business, I would have told you were crazy. But it's true. Like now it's actually something that I find really, really empowering. And it's probably the most important thing within business.
Definitely. And you're no stranger, I suppose, when it comes to that too, because I think, you're not by yourself mainly is what I'm saying, is that I think a lot of trade businesses are always good at their craft really at the end of the day. And I think the main thing that they all struggle with is is the finances when it comes to it. It's something like, I think it's something like, what is it? 8 out of 10 businesses fail in the first 2 years or something, isn't it? Or something along those lines?
Yeah, I don't know. I've also heard that 70% of statistics are made up, so who knows?
Yeah, well, that's right. And then here's another made up. It's something like, I think 80% of those small businesses actually don't understand their own. They don't actually understand their finances. So I think that's a big part to touch on too, as well. So
I mean, I'm still learning a lot in that space. I mean, even yesterday I was talking to my coach and I was like, can you just give me we're obviously just coming off the back of, setting up all the strategic goals and everything for the new year. And we've got some massive growth that happened last year in the business, despite of the pandemic. And then we've got some even bigger goals looking forward, which is going to involve a lot of moving parts. And, I still needed to pick his brain on clarification as to, gross profit, net profit, and just things like that. So we can really dial in and get granular with it. But I'm not an accountant. I'm not a bookkeeper. But it's something that I'm not academic either. I was never good at school, these are things that I've had to learn through the school of hard knocks. And without people to ask questions, I would never know the answers. So for any of you guys out there, you have questions about certain things, go and get help, because there are people out there that can help you fast track these things. For example, and I know you've been down this path as well, like with the whole, you mentioned the pumpkin patch, and obviously the author, who wrote Michael Michaelowitz, who wrote Profit First. We rolled out Profit First into our business just over 12 months ago. And instead of me trying to figure it out, I just went and hired someone to help me implement it. And it cost money, but how much money is it saved? And I can't even really quantify that, So that's made a huge difference to us, because it's basically set a foundation for the entire financial side of the business. It's like having a CFO in your back pocket, So I say to you guys out there, and you see, I hear this all the time with like technology, for example. Oh, what, $100 a month? Oh, forget it. And I'm like, you are an idiot. Like, imagine how much time and effort it could save you for $100 a month. I mean, like when we look at our org chart now, like, and I was going through this yesterday, looking at our org chart. There are significant parts of our entire organizational chart that can be replaced by tech.
Yeah.
That's freaking massive. Like, imagine not having to hire someone because there's a tool that can do it. Like, it's crazy. So I encourage you guys out there to have a bigger picture, perspective when you're looking at things like, investing into whatever it might be, a specialist or a coach or a tool or a technology or whatever it is, because forget about the upfront, forget about what the costs are going to be of it. Like, you've got to look at what that could be saving you and what it could be making you.
Yeah, definitely. And I 100% agree as well. I've always been for tech and whatnot, and finding ways to sort of replace roles. If Woolies are doing it with self-serves, mate, then we should be doing it in our trade businesses wherever we can too. So I always look at it and I go, well, like for instance, some of the apps that we use to manage jobs, to calculate profitability, where we're sitting on things, just to manage things. It's a no-brainer, at the end of the day. Like even us, the job management app, I think we use Tradify. I know we use Tradify. And it's good, but it's not quite exactly what I want and what I need to. So, we're actually investing in getting our own app built at the moment to do exactly what we want it to do, because I look at it, like the app already exists. It just needs to be tweaked and changed. So we're just changing a current app to suit us. Like my investment in that was just over 10 grand, but I go, well, hey, like the amount of admin work that I've got someone doing at the moment, just calculating costs and assigning costs to projects and, doing all that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? And that's, potentially, I think it's 75% of our job. We analysed and sat down. We said, well, hey, look, if I'm paying an admin, 55, 60 grand a year, and I can decrease, the amount of money I'm spending on her just by spending 10 grand, that's a huge saving. That's monumental. And not that I would ever look at getting rid of them either. They're great. I can just get them doing smarter tasks.
Correct.
Dumber tasks.
Exactly right. And I think that's a real testament. And when you guys are out there and you're making those considerations, when you're looking at your org chart and you're looking at the roles and responsibilities of people within your business and what they're doing and what's taking up the majority of their time, when you do it for yourselves, you're like, well, how can I free myself up from doing all this accounting crap? I'll hire a bookkeeper, no problem. But then you got to look at the bookkeeper and say, well, how can I make their life easier so they can be more productive? Like, why aren't they reconciling my accounts enough? Because they're taking too much time in doing whatever it might be. Okay, let's put a cloud bookkeeping software in place so that streamlines, gives them more time to be able to be doing their thing. And this is something that I've put a huge emphasis this, and I've actually recently really empowered our team to do this. So we've basically been able to now, and it's currently happening, my developers have sort of reached a certain level where they're maxing out with work because they're so busy. And I've been able to put a structure in place which empowers them to, I've provided them with the tools and I've provided them with all the things they need. But basically when they get to a certain level, I'm like, you need to go and recruit someone, to fill this void now because you guys are dropping the ball. And for them to hit their KPIs, they know they need to do it. So it's been really good because it means that, and I, honest to God, hand on heart, I do have no idea of who's in that pipeline. I haven't even looked at it. They're doing the whole thing themselves. They're recruiting. I've given them all the tools for it, but they're basically taken it on and they're running with it. Same with my marketing girl, Maddie. She's maxing out massively, and part of her, 3-month forecast is to do these things. And as a result, we brought on someone else to do some ads, and so she's starting to think in that space as well. How can she replace herself in areas so she can focus on what she is really good at, and build a team around her and under her that can help facilitate these other areas. So that's been really, really empowering.
And that's amazing. And even, like I said, I know you just touched on something there, which was really awesome that I had to hear say. You said even looking at the pipeline, you don't really know what's going on or what's coming up, I suppose you have an idea of what's coming up, but as far as you don't know as much as when it comes to the job specifics. And that's amazing because I look at it and I go, that's a sort of a true business owner in itself, is that to have the ability, for instance, for me, if I relate back, there's jobs where I had my salesmen or estimators quoted, they've quoted it, they've won the job, and then it's gone straight to, my supervisor for that project. And they've talked about the project. He started the project. He's finished the project and it's been invoiced, and I didn't even touch it. I didn't even know anything about it. And I suppose at the end of the day, like you speaking about your situation, And, that instance I just spoke about then, that's the goal of being a business owner, is to have it that it functions without you, and to get there that's the end goal at the end of the day for me personally. So like I said, I just love to hear that stuff. So I think at the end of the day, if you can have coaches that help you do that, and for instance, me just thinking about it now, if I have coaches and had a coach that helped me get to where I was, I don't know how to explain or give a better example about how it's worth more than that, really.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially, if you're moving into that space where you'd like to replace yourself from the business, you basically need to have that team in place, and you probably need to have somebody in place that can, do the day-to-day running of whatever it is you do. So if you just want to sit there and basically, say, for example, you've got a general manager in place who's running the business for you, and that might not necessarily mean that you're pulling a wage per se from the business. What it means is you're paying somebody to do the role that you're doing, so you can just, at the end of the day, run off the net profit and take money out of the business at the end of the year, kind of thing. So these are sort of like conversations that will probably be completely unrelatable to people that are just starting out in business. So don't be deterred, guys. And I think you touched on as well, Taylor, back in the day, when you were saying, you're working 6 days, you're maxed out, you're super tired. I think for the better part, most business owners kind of need to go through that journey in order to be able to experience, like, see all the things that are happening across the board, see what's happening with lead gen, see what's happening with customer communication, see what's happening with, callbacks, recalls, see what's happening with, complaints, see what's working, see what's happening in marketing, see all these kind of things, accounting, how to manage your books. Because once you understand all of those things, and once you can really feel the pain points in those different areas, then the journey that you went through, the journey that I went through, it puts you in a position to say, right, I am shithouse at this accounting side of the business. I need help. And then you go get help, and then you clear that up. And you go, right, now my marketing sucks. How do I fix that? Bang, okay, and you go get help there. And now I need help with my organizational chart, and I want to grow the business and the team, blah, blah, blah. So I can stop doing X. Okay, cool. This is what we need to do. So it's kind of, I think that's where having a business coach is good, because like they can kind of, for the better part, being that and like you said before, you're not different. You guys out there, I know you think you're different and you've got this super unique business, but newsflash, you don't. Okay, it's like small business is small business. The semantics might be different, but at the end of the day, a small business is a small business. And for the better part, a business coach will understand, that journey, and they'll be able to help you streamline and fast track, some of those results, and potentially be able to, foresee some of the impending issues that you're going to run into before you run into them. So I think that's the power of it for me.
Yeah, definitely. And no, like I said, exactly, running into those, them being able to show you those issues before you run into them. Like, I know the best description I've always had of a coach is almost like a GPS sort of satellite, really. Like, you're not there on the ground running and that sort of stuff, doing the day-to-day, but at least they're above watching you, and they can say, oh, cool, well, you got speed humps coming up ahead, or there's this, or by the way, just watch out for this. So that's the way I've always sort of looked at them, and, at the end of the day, and even them to have the ability to pull you out of, the day-to-day for a minute and say, hang on, like, pull you out of your business. Let's stand up here quickly and look down on actually what's going on. You know what I mean? That's been a big thing for what I experienced while coaching, to be honest. So, and for me, if would I do it again? For sure. I definitely do it again. To be honest, at the moment, I don't coach anymore because I feel I'm probably in a stage where I absorbed all the information that I could have got out of it. And that's just me personally. I suppose that other people feel like there's always more you can learn, and there always is.
But I think there's probably there's a time and a place for everything. And I think this is really important when guys are out there looking for, especially coaching. Very rarely will you find, and in my experience, I've never seen it, and I've spoken to hundreds of, or maybe not hundreds, but dozens and dozens of coaches from all over the world. They, in an ideal world, like, a coach will be able to help you with a specific area of the business, and they're really good at that. It's unrealistic to expect that they're going to be able to solve every problem for you. And so perhaps what happened, the reason you might have stopped coaching there is because, like you said, you've got everything, you feel like you got everything you could have out of this. I had this conversation with colleague Jason, who's a long-time listener of the podcast, yet last night. He was saying, he was with a coach and he just got to a point where he's like, he wasn't getting the value out of it anymore. Like, he'd sort of maxed out on what they were offering. That's really common. And there's no, it doesn't mean, like, you have to sort of take that with a grain of salt, in the sense of, well, they've got me to here, but then now I need to focus on this part of the business. Maybe I need to find a different coach that specializes in that. That's part of the course.
Definitely. And no, I think exactly. It's like that old saying, dreams without action are just dreams.
Yeah.
And that's the way I've always said. I say, like, having a coach is one thing. It's great. You learn so much stuff and, like, learn that way forward, but you still need to implement it. And sometimes some of those things, they're not 2 weeks to implement. They're not 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Sometimes they're 6 months. Sometimes they're 12 months. Sometimes they're longer, depending on what it is that you're looking at doing. So I suppose it's one of those things where, once you've learned it, you still need to action it, you still need to implement, and that might take time. Like for me personally as well, like I'm a big believer in reading books, and educating yourself and growing. But personally as well, like I feel, this is me currently, that I've got to a point where probably over the last year I've read, or a couple of years to be honest, I've read that many books and I've absorbed so much information. It's completely changed who I am, what I'm doing, and my mindset. But to be honest, I've probably actually stopped reading books of late too, just purely because I think there's a time where you need to sit and just think about what it is. I think it's one thing to take in all this information, but you actually need to sit there and actually think about it and think about what it is that I'm doing, how am I going to apply it to my business and what I'm doing too. And I think that's a cross thing between coaching and books and everything else. I think there's always a time where you go, hang on, like even the amount of times I finish reading a book, and I go, well, all right, well, how am I going to implement that? And I don't want to read the next book, you know what I mean, until I actually absorb what I'm going to do about that.
I think that's really important. I think people go into like information paralysis for sure. I mean, I do it myself. I'm in a habit of like, I'll go and source books like that are relative to what I want to learn. So for example, I'm, been really dialing in productivity this year because it's things that I'm really trying to optimize and improve. And as a result, our project management's just amazing and all this kind of stuff. But then recently I was like, well, how do I better manage my days and how do I be more productive throughout my days? And how do I use like checklists and quantify things as being important, and put them into like some sort of depository where I can go back and I can access these things and I can focus on different things which are going to help me get to, because we do these things called flight plans now, where essentially we're over a 3-month period, we build ourselves these scorecards and we basically have things that we're working towards within those 3 months. And that's been really good because it's kind of, it keeps you on track to the bigger picture, but it also enables you to associate smaller bite-sized things, to that. For example, okay, I realized that, I needed to get better at my productivity and, ticking major things off. This actually came off the back of a training program I did at the beginning of the year called 75 Hard. And the next stage of that program, the stage one was where you need to have like a master list and you need to be checking things off each day. And I was like, yeah, that's actually true, because you get so caught up in running the business that you sometimes miss the bigger picture things. And so now we've got this amazing structure, which I've built out in project management, which I've learned from a book that I was reading on how to be productive. So I specifically went after that and I got what I wanted out of that book. And to be honest with you, I got what I wanted out of that book at about halfway through it. And I haven't gone back to it again because I don't feel like I need to at this point in time. Like that's what I wanted to get out of it, and I got that out of it, and then I'm moving on to the next thing. So I think like as you get a bit older and a bit wiser, you start to realize and you learn, there's to go when you go seeking resource which can help you wherever you're struggling. It doesn't have to be a lifelong commitment. It could just be, like you say, a book. It could be a podcast. It could be a coach. It could be whatever, a program. But, it's there to serve a purpose.
Definitely. And I think the key thing that it all boils down to is, investing in yourself is crucial, and educating yourself is crucial, because at the end of the day, you're pretty much the most important thing to your business. Even though you're trying to get to the point where you're removing yourself from that business that it operates, without you, you're still the most important thing to help it get where it needs to go, and that's in all facets, education and health and whatnot. It was funny. I was watching something on Facebook the other day, and you might have heard of that Gary V guy, or
yeah.
And it was funny. Someone asked him and said, "Oh, well, how important is health to your business?" And then he just looked at me and said, "Oh, well, if you're dead, you're out of business."
Yeah.
And I just laughed. I just thought.
Very Gary.
It's funny, like that goes for education, everything as well. Like how you're supposed to grow a business, to that point without educating yourself. It's almost a simple, like, no-brainer thing. If you don't educate yourself, how you supposed to get it to where you want it to be? How are you supposed to scale it without educating yourself?
Any significant changes that I've ever made in my business has always been in a time where I've been reading a lot of books.
Yeah.
And I read a lot of books anyway, but like anything that's like really been impactful ever has come at a time where I've been really investing in learning things and dialing it in. Like now we're like, for example, now we're really dialing in our SEO program. Like we're like really starting to leverage that. I've just gone back and just become this student of SEO again. Yeah. And not because I want to do it. I won't do it. But I want to equip my team with the resources and the framework so that they can do it properly. And, that's been really, really powerful. So I'd say to you guys out there, to be honest, Facebook, Instagram, they're the biggest detractors, I think, from learning, in the sense that it's so easy to get caught up just trolling, maybe trolling, but scrolling through your Instagram feed, when you could be spending 30 minutes a day reading a book, and the amount of value and wisdom you can pull from a book, I can guarantee you will excel what you're pulling off, bloody Instagram.
Yeah. Exactly. And you're dead right, because David Goggins' book,
You Can't Hurt Me.
Yeah, that's right. Have you read it or?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, when he talks about time productivity and all that kind of stuff, and he really starts breaking it down in a nice, simple way for people as well. And he goes, you look at your day, you've only got 24 hours in a day. That's all you're going to get. You're asleep for, 8 hours of those. You've got 6 hours left. You're probably at work for another 8 hours of those. So now you only got 8 hours left. By the time you hang out with the family, do whatever it is you got to do, you chop another sort of 2, 3, 4 hours. You only got 4 hours left. Now you're spending these last 4 hours probably scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, whatever it is. There's an hour, 2 hours gone. You got to really look at it at the end of the day and say, hey, what am I going to do with those 16 hours, or even if you're working, say 8 hours, on the tools or whatever it is, and you're actually physically doing something, you've only got 8 hours to literally improve yourself.
Yeah.
Every day, and like I said, you're watching a Netflix movie, there's an hour and a half gone, 2 hours gone, you've got 6 hours left. And it's really thinking about and being conscious, like everyone's watching their bank account, everyone's watching their dollars going, oh, geez, I better not spend this money on that, or I need to pay the rent this week or whatever, as well. Like it's interesting that people don't treat their time the same way.
Yeah, I agree. And then there'll be people out there that'll be listening. Like we make excuses for things, right? Like to justify it. Oh, no. But you don't understand. I have to have Instagram for work. Oh, I have to, I've, as you know, like the SiteShed Facebook community's got over 6,000, people within that community. And I try and get in there once a day for maybe half an hour, for that whole, don't make excuses for things which, is not right. There's a word which I recently learned when I'm writing a book at the moment, and there's a word called acrasia. And acrasia means, it's like procrastination, but acrasia is when you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. So, for example, okay, I'm looking through Instagram. I'm justifying it to myself. I'm looking through Instagram because I need it for work. When deep down, you don't need Instagram. You're wasting time. You're just doing it because it's easy to access. It's on your phone. You could be doing something way better, like listening to an audiobook or reading a book or something like that. So I think sometimes we make excuses about doing things to justify it to ourselves, to make ourselves feel good about the fact that we're just completely slacking off.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like I said, the best thing we can do is just be honest with each other, or be honest with ourselves, sorry. Because, tradies would liken it too as well, when you're on the job site and someone fucks something up, the apprentice does something, or you might even do something, it doesn't matter, and at the end of the day, if, say, one of your employees comes up to you, goes, oh, I stuffed this up, and they give you excuses, like, I don't, as a business owner, you're there, I don't want to hear your excuses. Like, I just want you to tell me
sure
that you fucked up, and that's okay. We go, cool. Let's fix it. Let's get into it. And you need to do the same thing with yourself. You need to be there and say, man, just be brutally honest with yourself and say, am I hindering myself here?
Sure.
Am I doing the best for myself, And
the answer is inevitably, yes, you are hindering. Like, there are always ways you can improve doing things, and I'm not saying everyone out there needs to, completely revamp and do a 180 on everything they're doing. But you certainly need to take into consideration, I think, like some of the more significant things. Time management is massive. It would be completely realistic, I think, to assume that there is 95% of the people out there that are watching this can manage their time better. There's no doubt.
Mate, I'm one included too. I can always get better.
Sure, I know I can. I know 100% I can, and that's why I'm working so much towards it. Like I mean, for example, like even this week, I've said, okay, I'm not even going to look at. I'm not looking at Instagram all week. I'm not looking at it. I'm not, so I've deleted the app on the phone. I've deleted the app, the Facebook app on the phone. Everything. I just don't want to focus. I'm just not interested in it this week because I really want to start getting through some more books. And I know once I do that, like I'll sort of get into a routine a little bit more, go back into a routine where I'm just sort of, creating better habits. And I think that's important as well, understanding like how to create better habits. There's an amazing book called Atomic Habits. I don't know if you've read that by James Clear.
I've heard of it. It's on my my to-read list.
That is a game-changing book. If you're in the right mindset and you want to improve, I recommend reading Atomic Habits. I'll put some links to that in the show notes for you guys. But I mean, that book really will help you guys understand how to better manage your time and how to build better processes around doing important things within your day-to-day personal life and business life. It's all essentially the same shit. Like once you understand how to manage your time better personally, your business will improve. You can guarantee it because you're applying the right effort and the right amount of energy into the right areas at the right time. I can 100% promise you that. So shifting gears a little bit, Taylor, like I suppose, evolving from a one-man band to 15 employees in a relatively fast time frame, it brings to the surface a lot of challenges. I won't say problems, but challenges in the space of, well, first of all, you've gone from the guy digging holes and running the Bobcat to all of a sudden now you've got to do these other things. What are some of those differences that how has your role in your business evolved over that time period based on business growth?
It's been funny because, like you said, probably from in the beginning, I was doing exactly what you were saying, digging holes, making sure that everyone was going, and I'd be on the tools there building everything. And if I wasn't building something, the whole world stopped. So getting to the point where I got the 4 guys and I was staying on top of them, making sure stuff was happening, to the point where then I started getting, double that, 6 guys, 8 guys, or 10 guys, and so on. It became a case of staying ahead of them and forecasting and saying, well, hey, in order to have these extra 3 guys on, what do I need to do? Cool. Well, I need to make this amount more. This is the current level of sales I'm doing for 3 guys. To have 6 guys, I need to double it. How do I do that? Oh, well, I need to find more and more work. I need to probably invest in a bit of marketing, doing all that kind of stuff. So as you can see, then my role starts changing. I'm going, well, if I need to do more marketing, I don't have the skill set to do it. I'm going to obviously engage somebody to help me. So I did. And then all of a sudden, because now I'm generating all these leads, a heavy focus of mine at this point in time says, well, I need to start quoting and estimating. So I went through a stage where I was just quoting, estimating nonstop. So still at the same point, I'm still working 6-7 days a week quoting. But that's what I need to do to grow, to get this point. Because I can't employ, I suppose I could have employed someone just to straight up doing estimating. But for me, it wasn't, I just didn't have the cash there to do it, to justify, spending another salary on something like that. So I was doing it myself, getting it cranking to the point where, again, I'd put myself in the same limbo as previously before. I was like, man, I'm quoting 6-7 days a week. This is unsustainable. How do I change this? And pretty much, again, I then engaged salesmen to come on board who had sort of a fair wealth of knowledge when it came to quoting, and just had an idea of how things worked. He wasn't a tradie or whatnot, but he had still pretty sufficient knowledge to quote projects. And I'd had put together a system for him through Tradify, that job management app, where he could essentially go quantify things and pretty much bill for them. Quote for them, sorry. And just having that system in place meant that I could go, cool, I can literally palm off a lot of the quoting. So having that was just a game changer as well. That's where the apps and the tech comes back in.
Well, I think, to be honest with you, going even back before that, I think why that's worked out is because, first of all, you knew, because you were doing it at that point anyway, like you knew what needed to be outsourced or handed off to someone. So whether you knew it or not, you were able to build out those roles and responsibilities for a person to come into that role, and you'd equip them properly. And I think the biggest problem is when growing a business is you bring team members into your ecosystem and you don't equip them properly. And when they don't perform the job the way you want it to do, you inevitably end up firing them and blaming them for being bad, when the reality is you haven't given them the right start. You haven't equipped them with the right tools or software or systems or processes or whatever it is. So you've kind of hindered them from the beginning, and then it's just an easy thing to blame them and say, oh, there's no good staff around, when the reality is you're just a shit manager and a shit leader.
Correct, exactly. And I think that's a key thing there is, I think before you decide to delegate any job or palm any job off or employ someone to do that job, you should have done that job already before, and you should have a fairly good understanding of how it works. Because otherwise, say if you do want to employ someone to do it or whatnot, how do you know if they're performing well? How do you know if they're doing a good job if you haven't done the job? And if you want to hold them accountable to something and say, oh, why didn't you get this done in 6 hours? Like if you're a plumber or you're a carpenter and you're putting up frames and you've never done it before, and you rock up to the boys on site and you go, oh, how come you haven't done this before? Yet you've never done it before. And they're going, well, hey, mate, that's what it takes. Like, how do you hold someone accountable if you don't know the rules of the game?
I think as well, and one of the, just for you guys out there, something that we do to really help that is so that we everything has to be measurable. So when we're creating our 3-month scorecards, and I'll probably do some training on this, I think in hindsight, thinking about it, because it's super powerful, but everything within the scorecard is something that's measurable. For example, we want to make sure that our net promoter score is above 90%, whatever. That's measurable. We can gauge that through data. Or we want to make sure that 90% of our projects are completed on time within project management. Like, that is measurable. We can gauge all of that. If you're going to set goals and expectations for people and you want to hold them accountable, if you can do it in a way which you can actually track and you can monitor, then it basically does all the hard work for you. Because when you're going to do your reviews and you're going to look at these things and you're going to do your performance reviews and whatever you might want to call it, you can basically pull up the data and say, well, look, these two have been going really well, but this one not so much. How can we better support you here? Why has this not been going well? What are the problems you're having? What are the obstacles? And then again, you can take that information, you can build it back into the business using systems and processes and improve the structure of the business and improve everything, based off having things that are trackable.
Definitely. And like you said, you need to have the data. Like you said, you can make things measurable and all that kind of stuff, and that all helps. But like I said, to be able to track something and say, put a figure on something and say, look, this is worth this, and to be actually sort of track how people are doing and say, hey, look, and again, it's a fact. It's not just an opinion. I think he's doing this, or I think we're doing this. You actually have something to say, this is where we're at. This is where we are now. What do we need to change, or what can we do to make it better at the end of the day?
And if you're ever in that situation where you will inevitably be at one day where you're wanting to remunerate staff members, and maybe it's through like incentives or whatever it might be, without having that data available, it makes it very hard for you to do that. For example, if you've got trying to bring a new technician on board and say you put a new truck on the road, you need to know what the dollar value is for that truck to be, what they need to be turning over for the business. So, if you're going to bring a new staff member on board, you want to make sure that new truck is turning, $500,000 a year kind of thing. And if you're going to remunerate that staff member, you don't want to remunerate them on doing their job. You want to remunerate them on anything above and beyond, what they've been able to achieve as a base. So, you might give them an incentive or a spiff based on anything that's above that. But you want to make sure but you can't achieve that without knowing what the numbers are and knowing what the data is and knowing what those key measurable metrics are.
Exactly. And you're dead right. I had this exact conversation with one of my staff literally Friday last week. And I had put together a sheet, and which I do regularly, a sheet just for all my supervisors. So essentially there's the three of them, and I called it, Pete versus Nate versus Brock. So I just put them all up against each other, and I said, look, these are all the jobs that Pete's done. These are the jobs that Nate's done. These are all the jobs that Brock's done. And I said, look, this was obviously what we quoted the job for. This was the variations on it. So, on average, you achieved a 9.5% increase on variations on job. This was what the job was actually invoiced out at by the time we finished. And then obviously this was the cost of the job. This was the cost of the job. This was the profit on the job. And then you start tracking their margins and saying, well, hey, look, Pete, on average, he's achieving a, 25% margin on these jobs. And you look at, Nathan, he's achieving a 26% margin. And you go, cool, happy days. He's achieving 1% more than Pete. But Nath wants a pay rise of an extra, $5, $10 an hour. And you start going, well, why would I give you an extra $10 an hour when you're only achieving a 1% on average more than the other staff who's getting paid, less than you? So you go at the end of the day, well, you need to show me, like, I'm happy. I know I say this key thing to all my stuff. I say, look, I'm happy to pay you $1 million a year as a salary, but you've got to achieve $3 million a year to be able to afford and pay for that. You know, can you do that? That's the question. I say, I'll pay you whatever you want, but the results need to be there to do it.
Yeah, exactly. You know? I think that transparency is good. I think that's the evolution of my journey in business back when I was when I was working in businesses. Like, that information was never really communicated to me, and how that looks in reality. So now we make that really clear. I'm like, well, guys, if you want to do this, like, I'm more than happy. You can definitely have what you want here. This is what needs to be done to get it. So is that achievable? And if it's not, then how do you make it achievable? So then they're out there recruiting, because they're trying to build that part of the department. And like, they know that if they want to hit their, you know, what they're after, then they need to do things and they need to step it up. And it's sort of empowering them now. And I can see like they're really keen on it. And like, one of the things for them was, well, we want to take holidays. And I was like, fine, great. I want you to take holidays. And I've actually put, I don't know if I should say this in the podcast, because in case they listen to it, but in part of it's unlikely they will. As part of their KPIs this year, I've actually put together that they have to take a month. They have to be away from their office, their home office, for a month. So, and because they're whinging about taking holidays, so I'm going to force them to take holidays now. And I'm saying, you have to be away. And I'll pay them a bonus on doing that, as long as so what that's doing is empowering them to, because they know if they do that now, shit's going to fall over. So they're frantically now like trying to build out processes, and they're trying to build out systems so they can step away, and, you know, they've got, you know, people underneath them that can fill in the gaps. So it's empowering, and it's great for the business because they're building in redundancy into their positions. And I don't want to ever get rid of them, but like, I certainly don't want them to be in a position where they can never go away. And they're currently, they've backed themselves into that corner to a degree, because they haven't really, you know, been thinking long term, you know.
Yeah, dead set. And like I said, that's key at the end of the day. That all that stuff, you know, again, just that planning and making sure that you're on top of things, as far as that goes, and just the transparency in a business. Okay, you know, that's what I've always said to my guys. Like, look, I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm not walking around here, you know, bloody, you know, hiding stuff, or, you know, showing all when, you know, I don't want to see how much we're making or this or that. Like, I'm pretty open with it. I'll show it to the guys and I say, look, this is where we're sitting. And you know what I mean? And I show them, I go, well, that's why we have to charge what we charge, because we got to make money. You know what I mean? It's, you might be walking around here and you're getting paid, you know, $50 an hour or whatnot, and we're charging out 150, and you're going, oh, well, you're charging me out 150 or not. I say, mate, this is the reason why. I'll show you the costs. I'll show you why we need to charge that to make it work, you know?
So, one of the big questions, I suppose, that a lot of the guys and problems they have is around staff and finding the right team members. And like, what's your process around that? You know, now that you're sort of currently building and growing a team, like, how do you hire people? What's your attrition like? Like, you know, do guys stick around? How do you manage all that?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you said a few more guys. It's funny, like, I've got 2 really long-term employees. One of them was there since the beginning, so he's been with me all 5 years, which has been great. And then one of the other fellas, he's been with me for about 4 years of it as well. Both of them took a break for 6 months, so they just sort of like worked with me for a long time. Then obviously said, I'm just gonna take a break for 6 months. I was like, cool, happy days. They left, and they actually went and worked with someone else, and they end up coming back and saying, yeah, we want to be back here. So that's good in itself, which is awesome. But as far as hiring staff and that kind of stuff, yeah, to be honest, I've always found it a bit of a struggle. I don't really quite have the answer for it. I find, especially in the past, it's always been easy because I've positioned the business to in a situation where, well, like, position the business that people want to come work for it. And
how so?
Oh, it's just an attractive business in the sense of that, you know, we do great quality work. They see what we do. They hear our staff talk about how good it is to work here. And we generally hire through our staff as well, because, you know, again, I've always sort of said it, is that A-grade people hang out with A-grade people. If my staff, they're all fantastic at the end of the day. And I tell you what, if they're fantastic people, got their head screwed on straight, they're not hanging out with the opposite of them. So that's how I've generally found getting good staff at the moment. But I think at this current point in time, especially with COVID and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know what it's like in other parts of Australia, but at the moment I'm struggling to find skilled labour. That's a huge issue for me, and I don't know what the reason is or why it is, but that's a huge battle for me. There's obviously heaps of unskilled labour out there, and it's easy to hire, like good quality, apprentices or sort of just labourers and that sort of stuff. That's easy to pick. I'm always picking people based on their attitude rather than their skill set. Like there's that the age old saying, I can train you to have good skills and that sort of stuff, but I can't teach you a good attitude. You have to have that, and that's the way I've always hired as far as that. Hiring trades, to be honest, and skilled workers. Generally, I'd always apply exactly the same mantra again, the attitude over skills, because again, even if in my industry as far as landscaping goes, it's so varied, know what I mean, like concreting, tiling, it's so large that a lot of landscapers generally have different skill sets and they're specialized in certain areas, which is a pro too. And again, we always test their skills. We get them on site, we check them, we just work with them, see how they gel with the team after obviously they go through the interview process. And again, I just ask them questions about their background and see how I feel about them. A big thing for me is just getting someone in a room with me, and almost like their questions and stuff matter and their answers. But the biggest thing for me is just how I actually feel in their presence. I just feel I can gauge a lot of that. As far as finding, like I said, skilled labor at the moment is a huge issue. I don't know if you've experienced or spoken to many other tradies with the same issues at the moment, or?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's a conversation which is not new.
Yeah.
In truth, I think we went through like a really short period for a while back there when sort of COVID was in its infancy, where there was, for the first time I've ever seen, there was talent available. Like there was people that were looking for work because through redundancies and through, layoffs and that kind of stuff, all of a sudden there was good staff around. But like something that I've recently learned is that like anyone that's essentially any good is going to have a job.
Yeah, they're working for someone.
And so interestingly, that whole conversation around recruitment, and you kind of touched on it, and why I'd asked you to explain it a bit more is like, how do you make yourself, your business, more attractive than the business they're working in so they want to come across to you? And that might sound a little bit ruthless in the sense that, you might be taking employees from colleagues and, staff and friends or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, that's out of your hands. Like if you can present your business in a way, and you touched on something massively, if you've got a business which is reputable. And so we're running this thing at the moment called, some of you guys might be familiar with Net Promoter Score, or like internal Net Promoter Score, which basically what it does is you might be familiar with this on the client side, for example, where you send out a survey to your clients every 6 months or every 12 months, and you say, hey, how likely would you be to refer, friends or colleagues to XYZ, to your business? And they give you a feedback, and they say, well, it might be a sad face or a neutral face or a smiley face. They give you feedback on it. And essentially that adds to the Net Promoter Score. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, well, how reputable are we? And off the back of that, you might ask for referral or whatever it might be. But on the internal side, that question might be, how likely would you be to refer friends or colleagues to come work for us?
Yeah.
And basically what you're trying to gauge there is how happy they'd be to bring in, like you said, colleagues or friends into that ecosystem. And you might remunerate them for that. But basically, if you're getting a low score on that, then you realize there's work that needs to be done there. And so that whole process around recruitment today it's not as simple as just, writing a job ad and sticking it on a job board. Like you've really got to it's really a marketing exercise. And you guys really need to understand that I think recruitment and HR is probably the biggest marketing exercise you'll ever do. So how are you communicating that? How are you communicating like the value of working for your business and why it's such a good place to work and why what your current team members think, so on and so forth, because that makes a huge difference. And it might seem like it's a waste of time, but like if you're constantly building an ecosystem and a culture around that, then, ideally when you get to the point where you need to bring somebody in for a certain position, you ideally already have a pool there waiting of people to join. And so this is something that we've been working a lot on lately as well, is just, trying to smoke out the right talent. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be going to poaching them, but certainly making them aware that you're existing and you're looking for people that, for certain positions, because they might have people as well. Like you might have, so you might be after a general manager, and you've got a colleague who's got an amazing general manager, and you don't want to be an asshole and poach them. But like you said before, like talent hangs out with talent. So who's to say that person doesn't know someone that could fit that role perfectly, And so there's no problem in asking them, say, hey, listen, I'm looking for somebody that can do this, and this in our organization. Have you got any mates or colleagues that you think would be a good fit? Who knows what happens off the back of that, right? I mean, that could be a penny drop moment for them, thinking, oh, you know what, I actually hate this job and I'd much rather be in that position. Or that might be like, you know what, I've got a bunch of people that would fit that position. So like, I think that whole process around recruitment and taking it internal and like empowering your team members to, leverage their own networks, that's super valuable.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. And I think, like I said, just putting the word out to your employees to start with is a huge crucial one, because, if they're in the landscape industry, generally there's, any construction industry, whatever it is, there's no doubt they obviously know other people in the industry as well that they've worked with previously or seen their traps or whatnot as well. So that's why I always think, personally, your staff is always a good bet too. And like I said, that's the perks of having social media, is just keeping it out there too. And, I know in any industry as well, like for me, I'm following other landscapers, obviously on Instagram, socials, everything. I want to see what everyone's doing, not because I just want to keep an eye on, my potential competition, but obviously just to sort of see what's going on. So then I know they'll be doing the same thing back to me. So if I can provide good content all the time and show them what it is exactly that we do, and they go, well, hey, I see everyone's, having fun, having a laugh, they're working and they do great work. And I'm currently sitting in a position where I go, well, I'm not quite happy. Then it's something I might consider. The other half, though, is trying to encourage people to make that jump, as far as sort of like, when we talk about poaching and whatnot. Yeah, that's the hard thing, is just trying to encourage people to make that move, which I've sort of struggled with at the moment, to be honest, because this is actually a big issue for me right now, is trying to find that skilled staff. It's probably my biggest priority in the business right now.
Let me run you through. I'm just going to, and you guys that are watching and listening to this, you'll no doubt benefit from this as well. I'm going to run you through like the Tradie Web Guys recruitment process, the frameworks. Okay, so this is the journey that we take, and that you'll be interested to see at what point in this journey, and we'll loop back to it, that the conversation around, you were saying before, around competencies comes into play, right? So first of all, we have our entire recruitment process starts with our scorecard, and the scorecard essentially is there because we say, well, we need to hire someone to achieve these outcomes. 1, 2, 3. This is what it is. This is the This is the outcomes that we're after. And then off the back of that, we can go and build roles and responsibilities. Okay. So we can't really do anything without that. Once we have that, we can then go and create the job ad. And the job ad would include something like, some of those roles, some of those responsibilities that we're looking for, right? Once we've got the job ad out there, then we would have the first interview that we would have would be culture. And so we would have an interview for culture. And like you said, that interview is about how you feel around that person and, what that, how well you think they're going to gel with your ecosystem and your business. Because to be honest, you could have somebody that ticks all the boxes, and if they drop the ball on culture, then it's never going to play well. So that's a really important thing. That's the first thing we overcome. And some of those, and in that culture interview, you might want to do something, and I recommend you do something like personality profiling. So you profile the person, because you probably, once you understand personality profiles, you kind of get a really good indication of what sort of personality is going to fit that specific role. And it's not an exact science, but it can be pretty close. And if you can combine that with your gut feeling about individuals, then it can make a really big difference, and it can alleviate a lot of obstacles. So culture interview, and then off the back of the culture interview, we have competencies interview. And that basically is, okay, well, these are the things that we definitely need you to be able to do. Like, I'm not going to go and hire a web designer and teach them how to design websites. They need to know how to do that. You're not going to go and hire, a landscape architect and teach them how to use CAD. They should know how to do that, right? So there are certain competencies that come with the role, but that shouldn't be the first thing that you should be discussing with them, because to be honest, in a lot of instances, if they've got like a 70% or an 80% competency, then you can teach them the rest of it, and you can teach them your way. If they're coming at you with 100% competency, what that basically says to me is, well, they're basically going to want to do things their way, and then probably not going to potentially not going to want to be open to, to learning new ways of doing things, which is a massive problem. Again, that you'll probably be able to alleviate a lot of those things within the culture interview, because you'll be able to ascertain, sort of what sort of person they are and what sort of fit they might be. And then off the back of the competency issue, we have our commitment interview. And the commitment issue is basically where you run through the hiring position, what the job looks like, blah, 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 so on and so forth. You obviously get them to, to sign off and come on board. And then off the back of that is the onboarding. So I won't go into that. But so that's kind of the framework that we use. So it goes from job scorecard into ad templates, into culture, into competencies, into commitment. So right at the bottom there is competencies. It's one of the last things we typically interview on, but it's, obviously you recruit for certain things within the job ad. There's a template which covers off on some of those things. So ideally, you're not getting people that are coming to you that have absolutely zero competency. You're still getting people that are competent, but the point of the competency interview is to ascertain how competent they are in different areas of the roles that you're wanting to hire for, and then what areas of that person you can develop to best suit your business.
Definitely. And like I said, I think you're 100% correct, is that all those competencies and whatnot are very, very, very important. But at the end of the day, if that person is toxic or a shit person to walk around, excuse my French.
That wasn't French.
If they're anything like that, it makes it very hard, and like I know everyone always talks about having a cancerous environment or having someone in their organization who's like a tumor and it just, metastasizes and goes. That's the biggest thing you want to avoid. So like you said, almost that culture and their personality, who exactly like you said, you can ascertain pretty quickly through disc profiling. And if you haven't looked into it, I recommend you do, is critical, at the end of the day, because you might hire, someone who has, all the, competencies in the world. They're great at their job. They ace it and they kill it. And they come in and they're a bit of a negative Nancy and, just don't have that right mindset on their shoulders. If you hire them and you've got 10 other people that work for you, by the time you get rid of him, he could have taken 3 or 4 people with him. It's one of the hardest things you got to try analyze and get rid of that before it even enters your business. And then if you do have it in your business, you've got to get rid of that pretty quickly.
Yeah. Mate, this has been awesome. I've taken up way too much of your time, but thank you so much for sharing these things, and congratulations on all of your successes. It's been sounds like it's been a great journey, and we look forward to seeing how it progresses over the next 5 years.
Yeah, definitely, mate. No, me too as well. Like I said, I appreciate your time, and if there's anything that anyone needs or want to ask me any questions, I'm always more than happy to answer. You can always reach out to me. So
we are going to do a follow-up episode, as I mentioned earlier, on the approach that you guys have recently taken into your content strategy. So definitely stay tuned, guys, to hear how Taylor has been developing that within his business, because it is definitely relevant to you guys and something I've been banging on for a long time about. So keep your eye out for that. Otherwise, Taylor's in the Facebook group, guys. If you've got any questions, by all means, jump in there and ask him. I'll put all the links to things we've spoken about in this episode in the show notes, so you can jump over there to reference those, including books and that kind of thing. Otherwise, mate, let's wrap this up. What do you say?
Yeah, mate, I'm good for that. Happy days.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com, where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.